Imagine this. You fall asleep, close your eyes in your bed, and wake up in someone else's body. You feel unfamiliar skin, see the world through foreign eyes, experience events that never happened in your real life. Sounds like science fiction? But what if I told you that every time you drift off to sleep, this is exactly what happens? What if dreams aren't just chaotic subconscious images, but actual journeys of your soul, temporarily moving into other bodies, other lives, other worlds? Yes, your soul, your true self, wanders through completely foreign realities while your physical body peacefully sleeps. But before we get completely lost in these hypotheses and you drift off to sleep from my soothing voice, do one small but very important thing. Subscribe to the channel and like this video. It really helps a lot. And by the way, tell us in the comments what city and time zone you're watching our lecture from. We'd be incredibly interested to know where our future sleeping philosophers live. Now that you're comfortably settled and ready for a full immersion, relax, close your eyes, if you want to, and let me transport you to a story that will change your perspective on every single night. Let's begin. Imagine this. A hot, muggy evening in ancient Egypt, approximately 3,500 years ago. The city of Thebes, with shadows already hanging over the West Bank necropolis. In temple complexes, permeated with the scent of myrrh and frankincense, priests, their faces etched by time, bend over papyri. They're not divining by the stars or calculating harvests. No. They're deciphering messages coming from another world. A world where, according to their deep belief, our soul travels when the body sleeps. For them, sleep wasn't just images in the mind while the brain rested. It was a journey. Our ba, that part of the soul they depicted as a bird with a human head, would leave its mortal shell. It would soar upwards, cross the boundaries of the known, wander through the realm of the dead, communicate with gods, or, who knows, with the souls of other living beings who were also traveling somewhere at that moment. Understand? No joke, no metaphor. For them, this was the most tangible reality. And it wasn't just the Egyptians. Thousands of years, different continents, unconnected cultures. Listen, Siberian shamans, Native American tribes, ancient Greeks, African healers. You'll find stories in almost every culture on the planet where sleep isn't about rest. It's about work, about a mission. For shamans, it's the very foundation of their practice. A person enters a trance, and their spirit, they believe, embarks on a journey to the lower or upper worlds to find a sick person's lost soul, to uncover secrets of the future, or to negotiate with spirits. And it's not as if it travels. It really travels. Ha! A modern skeptic might scoff, sipping their morning coffee. How naive. They just didn't know how the brain works. They didn't have MRI scanners or electroencephalographs. And you know, in part, they're right. They didn't have our instruments. They didn't have our knowledge of neurons and synapses. But perhaps they had something else, something we've lost. A deep, intuitive connection with the world that allowed them to feel the invisible, hear the inaudible. Like a child who knows how to play without any instructions, or like a dog that senses a storm long before it begins. They perceived the world more broadly, not limited only to what could be touched and measured. Imagine we live in a two-dimensional world, but the ancients could see a third dimension. They saw how our world is permeated by invisible currents, energies, entities. And one of these currents was consciousness, or the soul, which at certain moments could slip out of its container, the body. For us, sleep is like a TV that the brain turns on for self-entertainment. But for them? For them, it was more like a remote control, a tool, or, if you prefer, a spaceship that departed every evening to explore new galaxies while its pilot slept on the bridge. So were these ancient people just naive romantics, inventing beautiful stories to explain the unexplainable? Or were they keepers of a secret? An ancient, forgotten truth that whispers to us from the depths of time. Wake up. Your dreams are not just dreams. Perhaps what we today call subconscious or reflexes, they knew as the free flight of the soul. And if that's true, if they weren't mistaken, then we have something to think about, don't we? Listen, picture this scene. Midmo imquanxin foran now. Sweden. Winter, the cold bites to the bone. In a castle somewhere, a man sits wrapped in furs, a quill in his hand. It's René Descartes. He's writing The Passions of the Soul, and his ideas are revolutionizing the world. He was the first to clearly separate mind and body, stating that the brain is merely a complex machine, and the soul is something separate, non-physical, that resides in that body. His thoughts float through the cold halls as the wind howls outside the window. For him, the brain was like the soul's residence, but not the soul itself. And now, let's fast forward to our days. Neurobiologists would just scoff at that. Imagine a serious professor in a perfectly white lab coat, glasses on his nose. You tell him about the soul, about deep experiences in dreams, about inexplicable realism. And he takes a pointer, jabbing it at a 3D brain model. Look, here's the thalamus, and here's the hippocampus, and right here, you see, neurons activate during REM sleep. It's all electrical impulses, chemical reactions, no mysticism, all your thoughts, feelings, your personality, and of course, your dreams. They're all right here, inside your skull. You, of course, try to object. Well, Professor, what about the things I saw in my dream that I couldn't possibly have known? Or feeling like a completely different person? Are those just neurons too? He'd likely just raise an eyebrow skeptically. Subconscious fantasies, the brain generates them, from fragments of memory, from snippets of impressions. It's an incredibly complex biocomputer. Yes, the brain is, without exaggeration, a supercomputer. It processes billions of bits of information per second. It remembers, analyzes, recreates, and dreams. For them, the brain becomes a kind of movie studio. It takes sets from our memories, actors from our lives, and beyond, and then puts on entire blockbusters every night. Special effects, plots, worthy of an Oscar. But here's another question for you. Who is the director of this movie? The brain itself? Or someone else? You know, it's like going to a symphony orchestra concert. The brain is the entire orchestra, every instrument, every note, every string and key. And the soul? Perhaps it's the conductor, the one who stands before this chaos of sounds, baton in hand, drawing harmony from it, or conversely, a deep dramatic symphony. Neurobiologists would say there is no conductor, the orchestra plays by itself. Each instrument has its own mechanism, the notes are written by experience and genetics. But then why do we sometimes see things in these films that seem completely foreign? Feel pain that isn't our own, joy that isn't our own? You wake up in the morning with a feeling as if you've just returned from a long journey. Not just watched a movie, but been there. It's as if you were watching a film about a mountain climber conquering Everest. And suddenly, in the middle of the film, you feel the frost on your skin, the pain in your muscles, and that incredible euphoria of the summit. This goes beyond simple empathy. It's an experience. Where does this boundary lie? Between what the brain generates from its archives and what feels like a completely new, foreign life. Neurons are electricity. They are chemistry. But can they, by themselves, create this incredible depth and realism of experience? Or perhaps neurons are simply receivers, like an antenna on an old television. It catches the signal, it amplifies it, but it doesn't produce the signal itself, right? That is the question, a fundamental one. Who is the master? In this nocturnal kingdom, you yourself, your brain, or something more, something invisible, intangible, your soul. Could it be the secret traveler, that very conductor who takes control of this orchestra every time you close your eyes and leads it somewhere, far, far away? Imagine July 1935, Princeton, New Jersey. The summer heat hangs heavy in the air, and in the study of two great minds, Albert Einstein and Einstein-Rosen, a concept is born that will literally revolutionize our understanding of space and time. Outside, birds were probably chirping, but inside that study, there was a ringing silence of thought, broken only by the scratch of a pen on paper. They published a paper on the so-called Einstein-Rosen bridge. You know, it was as if they said, what if we could fold the universe like a sheet of paper and poke a hole through it to get from point A to point B instantly, bypassing the vast distance between them? Essentially, these are the wormholes you've probably heard about in science fiction movies and books. Shortcuts through the fabric of space-time. Instant portals. Forget about stargates for now. Forget about spaceships traveling at light speed. And then even faster. That's all very expensive, very complex, and for now, impossible. It requires incredible technologies, exotic matter that hasn't been discovered yet, and honestly, colossal energy. But what if the most perfect wormhole is already within each of us, and it requires no fuel, requires no giant particle accelerators, doesn't cost billions of dollars? It's our mind, our consciousness, our ability to dream. How is this even possible, you ask? Well, listen. Our brain isn't just gray matter. It's an entire biochemical universe containing over 86 billion neurons. 86 billion. That's more stars than in the Milky Way. And each neuron is a tiny but incredibly powerful transceiver, transmitting and receiving information at speeds difficult to imagine. Imagine your brain is a supercomputer, but not just for calculations, but for modeling realities. And sleep isn't just standby mode, but a fully immersive virtual reality mode. And what if this supercomputer is capable not only of modeling, but also of projecting? What if it can tune in to other frequencies, or even connect to other servers? You know, like an old radio? You turn the dial and catch different stations, different voices, different melodies. Imagine that the entire world, the entire cosmos, is a giant radio broadcast, where every life, every soul, is its own unique frequency, its own distinct channel. And our brain in sleep is a super tuner that can temporarily switch to another wave, to the wave of someone else's life, someone else's experience. Of course, materialistic physicists are probably sitting there thinking, what anti-scientific heresy is this? These are just brain hallucinations, products of random neural impulses. There's no proof. And yes, they have their arguments. Chemical reactions, hormones, memories, processing the day's information. All of that, of course, is present. But does that explain everything? That inexplicable realism, That feeling as if you really were there, and it wasn't just a dream. As if you felt the touch of someone else's skin, the taste of someone else's food, the pain of someone else's body, or the joy, conversely. Imagine you're sitting in front of a computer, and on the screen is an incredibly realistic game. You control a character. But at some point, you suddenly feel that you are the character, that the boundary has blurred. This is what a dream is, if we're talking about journeys. So back to wormholes. If Einstein and Rosen showed us that space-time can be folded, then why wouldn't our own psyche possess a similar but non-physical ability? The ability to fold, not distance in space, but barriers between consciousnesses. Perhaps the brain isn't just a dream producer, but a kind of receiver-transmitter. A receiver of signals from other realities or lives, and a transmitter of our own energy into those very realities. It's as if your soul were a message in a bottle, but instead of an ocean, it's an endless sea of consciousness. And every night it sets sail, looking for which shore to land on. Forget stargates. What if our own mind possesses a hidden ability that allows us to cross dimensions without spaceships, simply by closing our eyes? And what if our sleep isn't a system bug, but a feature, a built-in wormhole for the soul? And we use it every night, without even realizing it. This isn't just fantasy, it's food for thought. Could our bed be the most high-tech spaceship in the galaxy? In 1588, at the height of the Anglo-Spanish War, when the invincible Spanish Armada thundered across the waters of the English Channel, it's said that an English sailor, drifting on wreckage after a battle, fell into a strange stupor. He later recounted seeing himself not in cold waters, not under a grey sky, but in sunny, hot Seville, dressed in velvet and silks, strolling down a street with an unknown woman. He felt the warmth of her hand, smelled jasmine, heard laughter that wasn't his own, but for some reason felt so familiar. It lasted moments or an eternity. He never knew. And waking up, he found himself back on the wreckage, but with the feeling as if he had lived an entire other life, leaving an invisible mark on him. It is this mark, this echo of someone else's life, that makes us wonder today. What if dreams aren't just images from the subconscious? What if they are a literal, tangible, spine-tinglingly real experience? Imagine this. One night you fall asleep, as usual, soft pillow, favorite blanket, but instead of the familiar darkness or chaotic images, you wake up. Only not in your bed, not in your home, but in someone else's body. What's that like? You open your eyes. The light is different. Perhaps a little dimmer or unnaturally bright. Around you, an unfamiliar room. Not your furniture, not your sense, and most importantly, you feel. Not your own skin. It might be thinner or coarser, darker or lighter. You touch it, and it's strange, like putting on a glove that's too tight, yet perfectly fitting. Only this glove. It's you, or someone else in whom you've found yourself. Do you hear? The voice that escapes your lungs isn't yours. The melody, the intonation, even the laugh, everything is different. You try to speak, and it feels as if your tongue doesn't obey, as if it belongs to another who has trained it their entire life in their own way. What's more, even your breathing and heartbeat feel different. Your pulse might be a little faster, the rhythm more erratic. You feel someone else's fatigue, someone else's energy, foreign habits ingrained at the muscle level. It's not your coordination, not your strength. You're temporarily a passenger in someone else's car, but you completely feel the engine's vibrations and the touch of the steering wheel. And most importantly, the emotions. Try to imagine. A stranger embraces you, and you feel not your own embarrassment, not your own joy, but someone else's. Someone's tenderness enveloping you, or someone's sorrow descending like a heavy blanket, even though you personally have no reason for it. You experience someone else's pain, physical or emotional, as if it were your own. It's not just putting yourself in their shoes. It's becoming the situation, becoming the other. Enough fantasizing, the skeptic will say. That's just a rich imagination. The brain paints pictures. Possibly. But imagine the scale of this imagination. If this were real, it wouldn't just be the deepest, most extreme empathetic experiment in human history. It would be a new form of existence. You would know what it's like to be a person of another race, another gender, another era. To experience the world through the eyes of someone who has never seen the sea, or someone who grew up to the ringing of old cathedral bells rather than the hum of machines. It would be like downloading billions of terabytes of someone else's life experience, feelings, memories, not just reading, but living through them. We're talking about total, complete, all-consuming empathy. Empathy multiplied by 1,000,000, capable of erasing all boundaries between I and not I. You would cease to be only yourself. You would become part of a vast, breathing network where every experience is your experience. And then the question, what would you feel? And what would you learn? Not just about others, about yourself, about what connects all of us if the soul is capable of temporarily, like a traveler, stopping in all sorts of different hotels, in all sorts of different bodies. The boundaries would blur. The world would become one. Or at least your perception of it would. Because if every night you can be anyone, then who are you really when you wake up in your own body? Just think about that the next time you reach for your blanket. Imagine this. Late night, April 1865, the White House, Washington. President Abraham Lincoln is asleep, but it's not a peaceful sleep. He sees himself in a coffin, surrounded by weeping people. He asks a soldier, "Who has died in the White House?" The reply, "The President." Just a few days later, on April 14th, he would be assassinated at Ford's Theater. Coincidence? Or something more? You know, this isn't just a spooky story that makes you shiver. This is one of those 1,001 nights when the boundary between dream and reality blurs. As if your consciousness for a second broke through the veil of the future, or to return to our main idea, peeked into some parallel frame of your own life, but from a different perspective. Listen, any skeptic would say, it's just the brain. Lincoln was under pressure, war, anxiety, so he projected it. Or selective memory. We only remember the dreams that later coincided and simply forget the rest. Excellent arguments, I won't deny. But what if such coincidences become too many? When it's not an isolated story, but an entire collection, like 100,000 tiny pebbles, each insignificant on its own. But together they form a complete picture, a mosaic that just screams, "Look at me." Remember the stories about prophetic dreams. How many times have you heard someone see a disaster in a dream that they then prevented? Or an insight that came not in reflection, not in meditation, but precisely in a dream? Archimedes, they say, discovered his famous law after a dream. Friedrich Kekulé, the great chemist, saw the structure of the benzene ring as a snake biting its own tail, also in a dream. For me, It's like the footprint of an unseen beast, left on wet sand. The beast is gone, no longer nearby, but the trace remains. Or like radio interference breaking through regular broadcasts, short, unclear, but undoubtedly foreign signals. Imagine that your soul, traveling, as we suppose, in someone else's body, in another time, or even in another version of reality, doesn't always return clean. It brings back particles, fragments, echoes, like small souvenirs from an invisible journey. You know, sometimes you wake up and there's this feeling. I was there. Not just fantasy, not just a set of random images generated by the brain, like a crazy deepfake, but a complete experience. Emotions that don't belong to your current self. Knowledge that came from nowhere. Physicists might skeptically raise an eyebrow. What soul journey? It's all electrical impulses. But if we're saying that the brain is just a receiver, an antenna for consciousness, then such dreams become much more meaningful. As if the antenna caught a signal from another station, sometimes clear, sometimes with interference. But the signal was there. So the next time you dream something unimaginably real, something that later accidentally comes true, or you suddenly know something you couldn't have known, pause for a second and think, is it just a coincidence? Or is it the echo of your own nocturnal wandering, leaving an indelible mark on your memory, hinting that you were far, far beyond your bedroom? Not just in a dream, but in someone else's reality, or even your own, but one that hasn't happened yet. Too many too real dreams to simply dismiss them, right? Consider ancient Greece, places where mysticism and philosophy were so intertwined that it was impossible to distinguish one from the other. Imagine Eleusis, around 470 BC, twilight. Thousands of people, devout pilgrims from all corners of the Hellenic world, entered the Telesterion, the sacred hall where the famous Eleusinian mysteries took place. They spent days and nights there, in a secret that could not be revealed under penalty of death. What did they see there? What did they feel? Historians still debate. But those who emerged from the Telesterion were changed. Their faces glowed, their souls were shaken. They spoke of some incredible vision, of understanding life and death, of a journey beyond. They believed their souls not just touched the divine. They experienced something that forever altered their perception of their own existence and what awaited them after life. So, the curtain falls. Our journey is coming to an end. But is it the end of the whole story? It's like the end of a play, when the actors bow, the lights dim, and you leave the theater with only one question spinning in your head. What if it wasn't just a play? What if, in every word, in every gesture, a part of the truth was encrypted? We've come a long way. We dove into the depths of consciousness, explored ancient beliefs, argued with neurobiologists, can you imagine? Looked into the wormholes of consciousness and imagined what it would be like to wake up in someone else's body. It sounds, of course, like the plot for a Hollywood blockbuster, I know. And perhaps your inner skeptic is openly scoffing right now. Come on, these are just fairy tales. Neurons, hormones, remnants of daily impressions. And he, to some extent, is right. We don't have a single, solitary piece of evidence that would stand up to scrutiny in a serious scientific laboratory. We can't attach sensors to the soul and measure its speed in hyperspace, right? But listen to me. What if the most important truth isn't the one that can be measured? What if it hides where the mystery begins? in that thin line between I believe and I know. Imagine your body is a spaceship anchored on planet Earth. Every evening you park it, shut down the engine, and supposedly go to rest. But what if resting for your true self is not lying in the crew compartment at all? What if it means leaving the ship, putting on another spacesuit, and going to explore another planet, another life? Foreign cities, foreign feelings, foreign dreams. Your brain, meanwhile, can be doing anything. Processing information, sorting files, clearing cache. It's like the onboard computer, running in the background while the main pilot is on vacation. And then you wake up, back in your spacesuit, back in your ship. You seemingly remember nothing, or only fragments, as if someone erased part of the log files. But something deep inside, at its very core, has changed. You've seen something, felt something, for which there is no explanation. Perhaps it is these journeys that make us wiser, more empathetic, opening up new facets of ourselves and the world. Next time you tuck into bed, when the world outside your window quiets down and the shadows of the trees outside turn into whimsical silhouettes, pause. Don't just fall into bed like a sack of potatoes. Ask yourself a question. Where will your self truly go tonight? Who awaits it there? What lesson is there to learn? And are you ready for your own grand nocturnal odyssey? Because perhaps the curtain doesn't fall. It simply opens up to a new, incredible reality. To your next journey,